Hi, and welcome to this presentation on my club, which is Manchester United. We will be looking into the issues that this club has faced and might be currently facing to this day. Even though Manchester United is one of the biggest clubs in the world, there are issues going on in the background that not everyone would realize from an external point of view. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of Manchester United and how the club was formed. This will cover some key moments that make the club what it is today. We will be looking into the ownership that Manchester United have, as well as examples of poor governance within the club, as they have been under fire for many controversies since their takeover in 2005. As the football club's driving force is their ownership, we will be seeing how this has led to the issues within the fan base. Manchester United fan base has played a crucial role in the formation of dominance of the club. However, due to the disconnect between them and the club, issues have been created which has had an effect on the image of the club. Finally, we will be covering how Manchester United have mistreated their women's team and have stunted their development due to decisions made by the club. Although I will be mentioning the topics separately, throughout the presentation I will be referencing all the issues to show how they're all linked. Before we dive into the challenges facing Manchester United today, it is important to understand the club's rich history and how its journey has shaped the identity we know today. Manchester United's past is filled with success, tragedy, and resilience. Manchester United's origins date back to 1878 when the club was founded as Newton Heath Football Club, originally formed by the railway workers from the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Company. In 1902, the club rebranded as Manchester United, beginning a new era. Over the following decades, the club endured financial struggles but steadily grew in stature. Despite financial challenges during World War I and World War II, Manchester United laid the foundations for future success during this period. Following the war, Sir Matt Busby became the manager in 1945 and revolutionized the club. He introduced a youth development system that produced an incredible group of young talents known as the Busby Babes. Unfortunately, this golden era was tragically cut short by the Munich air disaster in 1958, which claimed the lives of 8 players. Despite the devastating loss, the Busby Babes rebuilt their team, leading Manchester United to become one of the first English clubs to win the European Cup in 1968. The most successful period of Manchester United's history came under the leadership of Sir Alex Ferguson, who took charge in 1986. Ferguson transformed the club into a dominant force in both English and European football. During his reign, Manchester United won 13 Premier League titles, 5 FA Cups, and 2 UEFA Champions League trophies, with the iconic 1999 treble season standing out as one of the greatest achievements in football history. Ferguson's ability to rebuild squads and maintain success over 2 decades solidified Manchester United's place as a global powerhouse. Since Ferguson's retirement in 2013, Manchester United has faced a period of instability and inconsistent performances. The club has cycled through multiple managers such as David Moyes, Jose Mourinho, and Eric Ten Hag. While there have been brief moments of success such as winning the FA Cup in 2016 and the Europa League in 2017, Manchester United has struggled to maintain their dominance that defined Ferguson's reign. Issues such as poor recruitment, managerial instability, and off-field controversies have contributed to this challenging period. Now let's take a closer look at one of the most controversial issues surrounding Manchester United: the Glazer family's ownership. Their involvement with the club has had a lasting impact on both its financial stability and its relationship with its supporters. The Glazers' involvement with Manchester United began in 2003 when they acquired a 3% stake in the club. Over the next 2 years, they steadily increased their shares before completing a full takeover in 2005. However, this wasn't an ordinary purchase. The Glazers used a leveraged buyout strategy, meaning they borrowed heavily to finance the takeover. Crucially, this debt was placed directly onto the club itself, leaving Manchester United burdened with over 500 million in debt, despite being debt-free before the takeover. Unsurprisingly, this sparked immediate backlash from the fans, who felt the Glazers prioritized financial gain over supporting success. Um, Supporters feared the debt would limit investment in the squad and infrastructure, concerns that have since proven true. Another key point is that a reported deal with Sir Alex Ferguson, where Ferguson's support of the Glazers' family ownership helped calm tensions at the time. While Ferguson's continued success on the pitch masked some of these concerns, frustrations resurfaced once results started to decline following his retirement. The issue that started the backlash was the leveraged buyout that left Manchester United £500 million in debt, and this is just one example of financial mismanagement when it comes to the ownership of this club. The club's shifting models from sport first to a commercial first model was very visible. Epstein suggested that finance is slowly becoming the driving force of all sectors within business. This includes sports. This is very apparent in American sports, especially. Coming off of the successful rebuild of an NFL team in America, Malcolm Glazer has attempted to maximize profits for the club. This conflicts with the nature of Manchester United and their values, as they are a club deeply rooted with the lower class Mancunians. As a result of this, the performance of the club has been given a backseat. What is different about this Glazer ownership is that rather than investing their own money into the club, they use the club's funds to make the payments. Along with that, since 2015, after the passing of Malcolm Glazer, the Glazers began paying dividends out of their own club's account. After years of financial mismanagement, it has led the club to paying over £1.7 billion of interest payments and dividends. As I mentioned earlier, since the Glazers' ownership started, the performance of the club has not been a priority for them, rather a second thought after generating revenue. This has led us onto another point of poor governance, which is footballing mismanagement. Jensen and Meckling suggested agency theory, which highlights the idea of an owner hiring someone to act on their behalf. This can lead to conflicting ideas and goals for the club. As Malcolm and the rest of the Glazers were absentee owners, they appointed Ed Woodward to be the chief of operations at the club. Ed Woodward, before Manchester United, had no experience in football recruitment, but rather specialized in commercial deals. This has led to funding going into very expensive, underperforming players. Players were bought because of their value rather than their fit for the team. This caused the club to overpay for certain players who underperformed, and ultimately causing them to take a loss when the players were eventually sold. Similarly, with the players, many managers have come and go since Sir Alex due to football mismanagement in the club. Managers come to the club playing a specific style, but rather than buying players that suit the managers, the recruitment team having different priorities, which will lead to conflicts between them and the managers. Because of this, Manchester United have had 5 managers in the last 10 years, struggling to find good form. These issues within the ownership and management of the club also start to spread into the fan base. The Manchester United fan base is deeply rooted into the club, and they are known for having a very loyal fan base. Tajfel and Turner suggested the social identity theory, which explains how individuals form their identity through being a part of a bigger group or society. This is very prominent within the fan base of Manchester United. Historically, Manchester United has been a club deeply connected to its working class Manchester roots, with local supporters playing a crucial role in shaping the club's identity and matchday atmosphere. However, since the Glazer family takeover in 2005, fans have faced growing frustration over the club's shifting priorities. Rising ticket prices have made match attendance less accessible for long-time supporters, particularly those from Manchester's working class communities. This change has contributed to a growing presence of tourist fans at Old Trafford, reducing the intense and passionate atmosphere that the stadium was once famous for. One major shift has been Manchester United's increasing focus on attracting international fans, while expanding the club's global audience is important. From a business perspective, this strategy has had a negative effect on the matchday experience for loyal and local supporters. On top of these concerns, the rising costs associated with being a loyal supporter have added further frustration. While Manchester United season tickets are still among the most in demand in the world, they now come with several additional costs that frustrate long term supporters. Fans are now required to pay extra fees for domestic cup matches, European fixtures, and even for certain premium seating options, expenses that were previously included in standard ticket prices. Next, I'd like to focus on a significant concern for both Manchester United fans and football analysts: the deterioration of Old Trafford. Known as the Theatre of Dreams, Old Trafford is one of the most iconic stadiums in world football. However, in recent years, its condition has declined dramatically, reflecting deeper issues within the club's governance and investment strategy. There are 3 key issues contributing to the decline: poor maintenance, lack of investment, and the capacity and accessibility concerns. This lack of investment has angered fans who see Old Trafford's deterioration as a clear symbol of the Glazers' focus on profit over pride. For a club that prides itself on tradition and heritage, the condition of Old Trafford has become a growing embarrassment, especially compared to rivals investing in modernizing their grounds. Ultimately, Old Trafford's decline reflects broader governance issues at Manchester United, a lack of long-term planning, and a failure to reinvest in the club's core assets. In the next section, I'll explore how these decisions have further strained the club's relationship with its supporters. Before I explain Manchester United's history of protest and activism, it's important to first understand stakeholder theory, a key concept that helps explain why these movements emerged. Stakeholder theory, introduced by Freeman in 1984, argues that businesses, or in this case football clubs, must consider the interests of all their stakeholders, not just the owners and investors. Stakeholders includes fans, players, sponsors, and local communities, essentially anyone who has vested interest in the club's success. In Manchester United's case, many of the governance decisions have overlooked these key stakeholders, especially their loyal supporters. This has led to significant backlash, protests, and even a formation of breakaway clubs. Let's take a look at some of these key examples. In response to these issues, movements like the hashtag #GlazerOut and the Green and Gold campaigns emerge, symbolizing fans' determinations to reclaim influence over the club. These campaigns highlight that the belief that Manchester United's leadership has failed to respect the traditions and values that once defined the club's strong connection with its supporters. Adding to this disconnect, Manchester United's controversial involvement in the proposed European Super League in 2021. The Glazers pushed forward with the plan without consulting supporters, reinforcing the belief that owners prioritize financial gain over fan engagement. This sparked widespread anger, with supporters storming Old Trafford in protest, a rare powerful moment that forced postponement of a high-profile fixture against Liverpool. FC United of Manchester, perhaps the most powerful response to Manchester United's governance issues, was the creation of a breakaway club, FC United of Manchester, formed by disillusioned fans in 2005. FC United was found on the principles of supporter involvement and affordable ticket prices, directly opposing the commercialization of Manchester United under the Glazers. This club has since become a symbol of fan empowerment, demonstrating the loyal supporters are willing to take drastic action when they are excluded from the decisions that impact their club. Now let's move on to Manchester United's handling of their women's team, an issue that reflects significant governance failures at the club. Manchester United first officially established the women's team in 2001, but their commitment to developing a women's football, proved to be short-lived. In 2004, just 3 years later, Manchester United's women's team was disbanded, a controversial decision that highlighted the lack of investment in the women's game. Glazer family reportedly viewed the women's team as unnecessary and unprofitable, suggesting that its operating costs of 60,000 per season were unjustifiable. This decision reflected a short-sighted governance failure, especially when it compared to rival clubs like Arsenal, Chelsea, and Manchester City, who actively invested in their women's teams. While these teams were expanding and gaining success, Manchester United chose to neglect this growing side of the sport. This neglect aligns with theories like gender inequality theories, which highlight systematic marginalizations of sports, particularly in male-dominated institutions such as football. Before we dive into the specific issues, let me briefly explain corporate social responsibility, a key concept relevant to Manchester United's handling of their women's team. CSR refers to corporate responsibility contributed positively to their society, whether that's through community engagement or equality or environmental efforts. In the context of football, however, this can include inclusivity and fairness within the game. This also includes the development of women's football. So, one major example of Manchester United's poor governance regarding women's football was their delayed establishments of a women's team. While many Premier League clubs had thriving women's teams for years, Manchester United only reintroduced their women's side in 2018, making them the last Premier League club to have a women's sister team. This delay reflected a lack of commitment to women's football, especially at a time when the Women's Super League was gaining momentum and clubs like Arsenal, Chelsea, and Manchester City were heavily investing in their women's squads. For a club like Manchester United, resources and global influence, this neglect not only hurt the club's reputation but also demonstrated a failure to embrace football's growing commitment to gender equality. In addition to their delayed establishment, Manchester United's failure to adequately support their women's team was reflected in poor resource allocation. At a 2004 award ceremony, clubs officially publicly dismissed the women's team as unnecessary and unprofitable. They also faced poor treatment, such as being given used youth academy jerseys instead of dedicated kits. Additionally, they were often left with old limited equipment, further reflecting the club's neglect for their women's program. These actions contradicts the principle of Carroll's CSR framework. While Manchester United's leadership successfully prioritized financial stability, the economic level of CSR, they failed in the ethical responsibility to support the development of women's football. By neglecting this area for so long, Manchester United disregarded their role in promoting inclusivity and equal opportunity within the sport. Ultimately, Manchester United's delay in establishing a competitive women's football team and their failure to provide resource to reflect wider governance issues and a failure to meet their corporate social responsibility. To conclude, Manchester United's recent struggles can largely be attributed to the combination of poor governance, fan dissatisfaction, and a lack of commitment to inclusivity in football. Each of these issues had a lasting impact on the club's reputation and overall success. Ultimately, Manchester United's recent challenges can be traced back to a pattern of poor governance, profit driven decisions, and a failure to maintain strong connections with their supporters. For Manchester United to rebuild its reputation as a club that values success, community, and inclusivity, it's crucial that they invest in key areas like stadium improvements, youth development, and women's football, while also establishing meaningful dialogue with their supporters. By addressing these issues head on, Manchester United can restore the values that made them one of the most iconic football clubs in the world.